Welcome to this video tutorial on the new enhancements and features in ChartMaker Medical Suite 2015. The goal of today's presentation is to inform you on the major changes that were incorporated in this version, which include changes made to receiving credit for 2 of the meaningful use measures, several changes that were made to the patient portal, the addition of functionality to support the specialized registry meaningful use menu measure, and finally, the ability to e-prescribe controlled substances. We'll start out with some of the easy ones and then work our way through to the more involved features. First up is the modification made to the View, Download, Transmit and Secure Messaging Measure calculation for Stage 2. We are looking at the dashboard so that you can see which measures I'm referring to. The 2 measures are 10B for provide patients the ability to view online, download, and transmit their health information, and number 13 for secure messaging from patient. For the View, Download, Transmit measure, your provider is required to have more than 5% of unique patients seen view, download, or transmit their health information to a third party. This requires your patient to log into the patient portal and do one of those 3 functions: view, download, or transmit. The secure messaging measure requires more than 5% of unique patients seen within your reporting period send you a secure message. Again, this requires your patient to log into their patient portal account, but this time they must send you a message. The change that was made to these measures is that the software will now include all providers that saw the patient within the reporting period in the calculation, as long as one of the providers met the requirement for this measure. This was done to provide a more accurate accounting for these measures, and as a byproduct, will allow for more flexibility in achieving the measures as well. So, if you have multiple providers in your practice and your patient sees more than one of them within your reporting period, both or all providers will receive credit when that patient logs into the patient portal and either views, downloads, or transmit their health information to another provider or sends you a secure message. Prior to this version, only the provider that was associated with the original note or message would have received credit. The next modification to the dashboard is that there will now be 2 parts to the e-prescribing measure. 2A is the original measure calculation, and 2B was added to allow you to see your statistics for e-prescribing, including scripts sent for controlled substances. 2A does not count scripts for controlled substances in the calculation. When you attest, your office will choose to use the stats from either 2A or 2B, not both. Now let's discuss some of the great additions that have been made to the patient portal. Keep in mind, I am logged in as a patient. The first change should be pretty apparent. Instead of having separate menus for clinical summaries and labs at the top, there is now a consolidated menu for health information. If you hover over it, you will see the options for clinical summaries, lab reports, and other information. The clinical summaries and lab reports pages are the same as before, just relocated. The other information page is new. This page will contain any scanned images that were marked to go to the patient portal upon signing. So for example, this would be the way for you to get lab results that are not electronic to be displayed on the portal. The next change is to clinical summaries. You will now see 2 different headings for documents located under the clinical summaries menu. Previously, any note that was sent to the portal was labeled Summary of Today's Visit, like we are seeing here. However, that could be misleading, as the note could have been a signed note that contained structured data, but wasn't necessarily generated because of an office visit. So now Clinical will differentiate between the 2 and label them appropriately. If the chart note had an applicable encounter code selected, then it will be named Summary of Today's Visit. If a chart note is entered with structured data but without an encounter code, it will be labeled Health Information Update, like we see here. Next, let's go into Clinical so I can show you how to upload scanned documents to the portal. There are two places that you will find this option. First is in the Scan Documents dialog. Select your scan and the patient like you normally do. Then you will see the new option at the top for Send to Patient Portal on signing. Please remember that you will only see this option available for registered Patient Portal users. This box will be selected by default, so if you do not want this scan to go to the portal, remember to uncheck it prior to clicking Save. After filing the document and signing it through the chart, it will then go to the patient portal and will be located under the Other Information menu. The other place you will see this option is in the patient's chart. In the note header section, you will see a new checkbox for Send to Patient Portal on Sign. Again, to see this option, you must be viewing a scan and the patient must be a registered Patient Portal user. If the checkbox was selected in the Scan Documents dialog, it will also be checked here. One nice thing about having the option in the chart as well is that if you accidentally left this checkbox selected on the Scan Documents dialog, you could always uncheck it here prior to signing the note. If this checkbox is selected and the scan is signed, the document will be sent to the patient's portal and will be displayed under the Other Information menu. The last new feature that might come in handy is the option to manually send a note to the patient portal. This is done by right-clicking on the note and selecting Send Note to Patient Portal. This can be done for any type of note, whether it is a scan, signed, or unsigned note. This functionality would be used in situations like wanting to send a note that was entered in the EMR prior to the patient completing registration, or if their data export is suspended but you want to send individual notes, and or if you want to manually send an unsigned scan. Most likely, if it is not one of those situations, the note will be sent during the automatic export of data, so this option would not be necessary. Finally, in regards to the patient portal updates, the last thing we will discuss is the registration process. Prior to the ChartMaker 2015 release, you were required to enter an email address in order to authorize the patient for the patient portal. However, we have modified this logic to allow for authorization without an email address on file going forward. Remember, if you do have an email address on file, a reminder email will be sent to the patient immediately upon authorization, and they will click on a link from within that email to complete the registration process. Going forward, if you do not have an email address documented at the time of authorization, an instructional handout will be printed and should be given to the patient so they can register at a later date. This patient does not have an email address listed, so when I click Patient Portal, I will receive a slightly different option. You will now see two authorized options in this dialog. However, only one is going to be available if you do not have an email address documented. The descriptive text next to the two options will remind you which one does which function. So you would click Authorize and then Yes to continue. After clicking OK and Save on the patient's account, instructions will print to your default printer. The instructions will look similar to this. You should then give those instructions to your patient. If the patient does have an email address on file, after clicking Patient Portal, you will notice you now have two authorized options. To register your patient via an email invite, click the first Authorize button. You will still have the option to manually print instructions, however, it is not necessary to do both for an individual patient. If you do happen to click both Authorize buttons prior to clicking OK, whichever option you selected last is the one the software will recognize. If you happen to authorize the patient via email and you also print instructions, and the patient attempts to register both ways, they will be prompted at the second attempt that they already have an account. So it is completely possible to do both email and print instructions. However, doing both may confuse the patient. As a general rule, you will probably want to do one or the other for an individual patient. Let's switch gears and talk about the CECity Interface. This interface will fulfill the Stage 2 menu measure for submitting other cases to a specialized registry. The great news is that there is no additional data entry required on your part in order to achieve this measure. There will be an automated process that happens in the background of clinical that will extract the necessary information. Then the Health Portal service will batch and send the information to CECity on a daily basis at 6 a.m. If you are interested in attaining this measure, you should go to our website, sticomputer.com, and click the Enrollments link at the top of the page. Then click CECity Enrollment and fill out the enrollment form. CECity states that once they receive your enrollment, it could take up to 3 weeks to complete the process. After enrollment is complete and STI has configured your health portal for the new service, your provider will receive a to-do list notification, which will look like this. This to-do list notification should be printed for your records by clicking Print at the top in case it is needed for attestation and/or an audit. CECity does charge for this service, so STI will bill your practice $399 per year per provider if you enroll. However, even though there is a fee, remember that your staff doesn't have to do anything additional in the software to achieve this measure, so it might still be a good option. So to recap, if you would like to attest to the specialized registry menu measure for Stage 2, fill out the CECity enrollment form on our website to start the process. Next is EPCS, or E-prescribing of controlled substances. The EPCS functionality works in conjunction with an IdenTrust USB token and certificate to ensure proper two-factor authentication security per DEA regulations. Please keep in mind that the requirements I show here all originated and were certified by the DEA, as they are the governing body for the EPCS capability. All providers that want to electronically prescribe controlled substances must have a valid DEA number and be in good standing. Providers will also need to obtain an IdenTrust token that will need to be inserted into your computer whenever you want to e-prescribe controlled substances. To obtain this token, go to our website, sticomputer.com, and click on the Enrollments link. Then click the option for Electronic Prescribing of Controlled Substances, EPCS. The enrollment you complete here will be twofold. It will fulfill the request to add this functionality to your ChartMaker Medical Suite, as well as purchase the required token through IdenTrust. Once the token and certificate are obtained and installed in your system, your staff will then complete the remaining setup prior to being able to e-prescribe controlled substances. So now let's go through the steps you will take to configure EPCS in clinical. The first thing is to designate the 2 users that will be the logical access users. The logical access privilege allows a selected user the ability to administer EPCS capabilities to qualified users. It does not grant access to electronically prescribing controlled substances. At least 2 users need to be assigned the logical access privilege before the EPCS authorization can be performed. Likewise, at least one of the users must be an IdenTrust token holder and a provider who is a DEA registrant in good standing. To designate users for logical access, go to Edit, System Tables, Users. Highlight the user you want to modify, and click Properties. Scroll down and find the logical access privilege and highlight it. Then change the level to Authorized. Click OK to save your changes. Then repeat those steps for your next user. Once you have at least 2 users set up for logical access, then you can move to the next step, which is the prescriber setup. To set up an individual provider, go to Edit, System Tables, Electronic Prescribing, Prescriber Setup. This new dialog will control e-prescribing, whether it is for a controlled substance or not. Highlight the applicable provider and your location if you have multiple, and then click Edit. From within this dialog, you will want to make sure the demographic information for this provider is correct and that it includes an SPI and a DEA. The SPI comes from SureScripts and is their unique provider ID. If you are missing the provider's SPI and are unaware of what it is, please call clinical support. Once you have the SPI and DEA entered, check the box for EPCs enabled. This field will not be available until all required information is entered and validated. Then click OK to save your changes. If you have another provider to enable, you can do so at this time. If not, click OK to close the prescriber setup dialog. Your next step will be to link the IdentTrust token to the provider. Make sure you are logged in as the provider to do this. Then plug the IdentTrust token into your computer. The first time you do this, you will receive a security warning confirming whether you want to install a certificate. You should select Yes when prompted with this. Once the token is plugged in, go to Edit, System Tables, Electronic Prescribing, EPCs Token Linkage. Click Load and select your token. Then click Link and OK once you receive the confirmation message. If for some reason you need to unlink the provider to that token, you can do that through the same dialog. If we go back into Edit, System Tables, Electronic Prescribing, EPCs Token Linkage, we will see the option to unlink here. After linking the token to the provider, your next step will be to authorize the provider for the EPCs functionality. To do so, log into Clinical as the other logical access user, whether that is an office manager, system administrator, or another provider. Then go to Edit, System Tables, Electronic Prescribing, EPCs Prescriber Authorization. Please keep in mind that the user logged in needs to have their logical access privilege set to authorized in order for this menu option to be available. In this dialog, you will see a list of all the active providers with the properly configured NPI and have a linked token at the top. Select the provider from this list that you are attempting to authorize. Then, from the Logical Access User dropdown, select the person that you would like to send this authorization request to. This could be the provider that you are selecting from the top or someone else. Most likely, if this is the first provider you are attempting to authorize for EPCs, you will be selecting the same user from the top and the dropdown. The users you see in the Logical Access User dropdown are any users that have the Logical Access privilege and have a linked token. After selecting the prescriber and the Logical Access User, click Authorize and Yes to confirm your request. An authorization request will then be sent to the to-do list of the user that you selected from the dropdown. In this dialog, you will see the authorization status change to pending approval, with the user's name that you sent the request to showing in the outstanding reminder column. Once the request is accepted, the authorization status will change to approved. If you need to send the authorization request again, select your prescriber and the Logical Access User and click Resend Request. If you would like to cancel the authorization request altogether, highlight the prescriber and click Cancel Request. When you are done, click Close. Now let's take a look at the authorization request, so we'll switch over to being logged in as a provider. You will see a red EPCs authorization approval request sitting on their to-do list. Double-click on the request to process it. You will want to make sure your token is inserted into your computer and then click Approve to continue. Type your token password, which was created by you during the IdentTrust installation process. Then click OK. And OK when you receive the confirmation message. At this point, the reminder on the to-do list will disappear, and the provider can now e-prescribe controlled substances. Before I show you the medication dialog, let's go back and take a look at the authorization dialog so we can see how that will look now. We'll do so as an administrator since we will see more options that way. So we'll go back to Edit, System Tables, Electronic Prescribing, EPCS Prescriber Authorization. You will now see this provider's status as approved. If for some reason you would like to revoke the EPCS privilege for a provider, highlight the provider at the top, select the logical access user, and then click Revoke from the bottom. Similar to the authorization process, a confirmation request will then be sent to the user's to-do list to complete the revocation. Now that we have our provider set up, let's look at how to e-prescribe a controlled substance. Open a chart note and click the medication button. Then click Add Medication and search for a controlled substance. This dialog has two new additions related to EPCS. First, you may notice that the schedule associated with the drug is listed before the name at the top of the dialog. The second thing is the earliest fill date field at the bottom. The earliest fill date field allows you to configure the earliest date that the patient could fill this prescription. When you click the checkbox, today's date will be populated. This field is required whenever you prescribe a Schedule II controlled substance. You will see this field enabled for all medications, however, it is only required for Schedule IIs. After you've filled in all the appropriate information for this prescription, click Next. The confirmation screen now has a few new fields as well. First, if your provider practices in multiple locations, then make sure to select the correct location from the dropdown. Then select the patient's pharmacy. In order to send a controlled substance electronically, the pharmacy must participate. You will see the EPCS designation next to any pharmacy that accepts electronic scripts for controlled substances. Then click Ready to Sign. Clicking Ready to Sign was a requirement by the DEA and is meant to force the provider to double-check the accuracy of their information prior to sending the script to the pharmacy. Next, make sure you have your token plugged in and then click Sign and Send. You will then be prompted to enter your token password. Remember, this was created by you when you installed your IdentTrust token. The combination of the token and entering your password is the two-factor authentication that the DEA requires. Click OK to complete the process. And that's it. Your controlled substance will then be electronically sent to the pharmacy. And finally, let's talk about auditing and the reports you will receive related to EPCS. All EPCS activity is tracked within ChartMaker Medical Suite. To view the EPCS audit log, go to Chart, Audit, EPCS Audit Trail, and Drug Log. You will see two tabs at the top. One for the audit trail, which will be the default view, and one for the controlled substance drug log. The audit trail will display any actions related to EPCS that were taken by a user. This would be things such as approving users for the EPCS privilege, user logins, prescription creation, deletion, etc. If you open this dialog inside of a patient's chart, the information displayed will be specific to that patient. We open this dialog outside of a patient's chart, so the information displayed will not be patient-specific. By default, this dialog will be blank, so you will need to adjust your report criteria first, if necessary, and then click Refresh Report to view the information. The audit information will then be displayed at the top. If you would like to narrow down the information you are seeing, uncheck the unnecessary items from the Custom Report section and click Refresh Report again. If you are looking for a specific record, you may want to use the metadata filters, which will allow you to pick fields like chart number or medication name to filter on. If you would like to save a copy of this report, click Save as Text or Save as HTML. The controlled substance drug log will display script-specific information for controlled substances that were electronically prescribed. If you would like to run a drug log manually, from the New Report tab, change your report criteria, filtering by provider or date, and then click Generate Report. Every time you click Generate Report, you are creating a new drug log, which will then be accessible through the Report Archive tab. You will see your report details appear at the top with the option to save a copy of it at the bottom by clicking Export. Clicking Export will allow you to save this as a CSV file format. To view a previously generated report, click the Report Archive tab at the bottom. Then click Previous Reports. The list of previous reports you see here is a combination of any drug log you may have run manually, as well as the monthly drug log that is run automatically. Select the report from the top, and then click View Report from the bottom. The information contained within that report will then be displayed. Each line item showing in this log is a controlled substance script sent to the pharmacy electronically. When you are finished viewing the audit trail, click Close. Now let's discuss the two reports that you may receive on your to-do list. First, we have a daily incident report that will be sent to the to-do list for any user that is authorized for the logical access privilege. You can see an example of one here. If you double-click on your to-do list reminder, it will open up the audit dialog with the report already loaded. The purpose of this report is to notify you of any potentially suspicious or fraudulent actions. However, just because something shows on the report doesn't mean that it is necessarily unauthorized. The report will display actions such as failed login attempts, modifying the EPCS privilege for a user, etc. Someone from your staff should be looking at this report daily and determining whether the activity is indeed reportable or not. If you come across unauthorized activity, you should save the report for your records by clicking one of the save options at the bottom, and then also reporting it to STI and the DEA within 1 business day. When you are done viewing the report, click Close. The last report is the Controlled Substance Monthly Drug Log. This report will be sent to the to-do list for any EPCS authorized user on the first day of the month. This archive will contain all of the controlled substance prescriptions issued within the system for that provider. This report must be generated and reviewed no later than 7 calendar days into the current month. If you are ever audited by the DEA and they see that you have never reviewed these reports, your practice could potentially be held liable. To view the report, double-click on it from the to-do list reminder. The information within that report will then be displayed. Please note, if you are logged in as a user other than the provider, when you double-click on the monthly drug log, it will open to the archive dialog, allowing you to select which log you would like to view. The auto-generated monthly drug logs will have System in the Generated By column. Any log that has a user's name in the Generated By column was manually generated by that user. If you would like to keep a copy of this report for your records, click the Export button at the bottom. This will save your report as a CSV file. Click the Close button when you are done. Okay, so let's recap. If you're interested in e-prescribing controlled substances, you must first fill out the enrollment form on our website, sticomputer.com. This will include you purchasing the IdentTrust token, which will run you about $160 before shipping. That IdentTrust token and certificate will be valid for 2 years. After the 2 years, you will need to renew that certificate, which at the current rate is $109. Then after you receive your notification that your enrollment is complete and the token in the mail, you can walk through the one-time steps to configure your users in Clinical. These include configuring at least 2 users for the logical access privilege, adding all required information in the prescriber setup dialog, linking your token, and finally authorizing the provider for the EPCS functionality. After you've completed these steps, your provider will then be able to e-prescribe controlled substances. If you need assistance with this process, please download the appropriate user materials from our website, sticomputer.com. That concludes our presentation on the new enhancements and features in ChartMaker 2015. If you have any questions regarding the information contained within this video, please contact customer support at 1-800-487-9135.